25% of the world's oil supply is being held hostage right now, not by a superpower, not by a nuclear-armed nation with a blue water navy, but by a force of fast boats, silent underwater drones, and caves carved into solid rock. And the United States military, the most powerful conventional fighting force in the recorded history of human civilization, cannot do a single thing about it. Let me say that again, so it lands properly. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, the armored fist of American naval power in the Persian Gulf, has been effectively paralyzed in the Strait of Hormuz by a regional military force that Washington has spent decades dismissing, underestimating, and mischaracterizing to the American public. And what I'm about to walk you through is not speculation, not opinion, not the kind of hot take you get from someone who has never been in an operational environment. This is a forensic analysis of 40 years of deliberate, patient, institutionally committed strategic preparation, and what it looks like when that preparation makes contact with reality. By the time you finish watching this, you will never look at American military power the same way again. Let me establish something right at the outset, because it frames everything that follows. I spent years working as a weapons inspector and military intelligence officer. I have been in rooms where real strategic decisions are made. I have read the classified assessments. I have seen the wargaming results, and I know how the United States military actually thinks about threats when the cameras are off and the press releases are put away. And what I can tell you with absolute certainty is this: the Strait of Hormuz has appeared in American threat assessments and CENTCOM planning documents as the single most critical strategic vulnerability in global energy security for over 4 decades. Every president since Carter, every naval commander, every major defense review, every classified war game, all of them identified this precise 34-kilometer stretch of water as the location where American commitments to global economic stability were most exposed and most difficult to guarantee. The assumption embedded in all of that analysis, never truly examined, never stress-tested against a genuinely determined and prepared adversary, was that American military credibility alone would be sufficient to deter any regional force from seriously attempting to close it. That assumption is now dead, killed not in a single dramatic engagement, not in a conventional naval battle, where you can point to a winner and a loser, but killed slowly, methodically, and with extraordinary precision over 4 decades of preparation. That culminated in what is unfolding right now in those waters. To understand what the IRGC Navy has built in the Strait of Hormuz, you cannot start with February 2026. You have to go back to 1987. That is the year that changed everything, not just for Iran, but for the entire future architecture of asymmetric naval warfare globally. During the brutal Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, Iran's conventional navy and the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy refused to aggressively interdict the tanker traffic that Kuwait and Saudi Arabia were using to fund Saddam Hussein's war machine. Too cautious, too constrained by the fear of international consequences, too institutionally wedded to the conventions of state-on-state naval warfare. Ayatollah Khomeini watched this institutional timidity and made a decision whose consequences are now being felt by every oil market, every shipping company, and every government on earth. He created a completely separate military force, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, with an entirely different mandate, an entirely different doctrine, and absolutely zero interest in the rules of engagement that had hobbled its conventional counterpart. From the first day of its institutional existence, the IRGC Navy had one primary strategic mission embedded in its core identity: turn the Strait of Hormuz into the most lethal and most consequential military trap in modern history. And they have had nearly 40 uninterrupted years to build it exactly as they intended. In 1988, the United States got its first serious preview of what that mission would eventually look like at scale. The USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian mine in the Persian Gulf and nearly sank. Washington responded with Operation Praying Mantis, one of the largest American naval surface engagements since World War II. Several Iranian naval vessels were destroyed in a single day. The White House declared victory. The American media called it a definitive demonstration of overwhelming U.S. naval superiority. I want to be very precise about what happened inside the IRGC's institutional thinking in the aftermath of that engagement, because the lesson they drew was the complete inverse of what Washington intended to communicate. They concluded permanently and at every level of their command structure that they could not fight the American Navy in a direct conventional confrontation and survive. And therefore, they would never fight it in a direct conventional confrontation. Instead, they would build an environment that carefully, patiently, over decades, in which American conventional superiority would be tactically irrelevant by the time any confrontation actually arrived. That is not a rhetorical flourish. That is the foundational strategic logic that has driven every procurement decision, every infrastructure investment, every doctrine development, and every operational exercise the IRGC Navy has conducted since 1988. And the result of 35 years of that work is what the U.S. Fifth Fleet is staring at right now. What that trap looks like in physical terms is something that even the most senior analysts in Washington describe as genuinely unprecedented in the history of modern naval warfare. The IRGC Navy operates across 5 separate geographic zones of responsibility along the Persian Gulf coastline. It maintains active military presence on approximately 38 islands positioned inside and immediately adjacent to the strait. And carved directly into the solid rock face of those islands and along the Iranian mainland is engineered deep enough and positioned precisely enough to be invisible from American reconnaissance satellites in low Earth orbit, are at least 10 fortified operational bases built specifically to shelter and rapidly deploy fast attack craft. Boats docked along piers, inside caves excavated from solid rock, capable of being deployed within minutes of receiving an order. I need you to sit with the full weight of that for a moment. Those caves were not natural geological formations that Iran stumbled upon and conveniently adapted. Iran excavated them deliberately, systematically, over years, using dedicated military engineering resources, specifically to hide operational military assets from the most advanced satellite reconnaissance network ever constructed. This concealment infrastructure was built and expanded, essentially in plain sight, while the world's intelligence community was focused on nuclear programs, missile development, and proxy networks. The cave network hiding Iran's fast attack fleet is one of the most consequential pieces of military infrastructure built anywhere on Earth in the last 3 decades, and it received almost no serious public attention until the moment it began producing operational consequences that could no longer be ignored. The fast attack boats sheltered inside those caves, what analysts have universally begun calling Iran's mosquito fleet, represent a masterpiece of asymmetric weapons engineering. The precise number of vessels in the IRGC's fast attack inventory is genuinely classified and actively disputed among Western intelligence services. Open source estimates from credible defense analysts range from several hundred to well over 1,000 individual craft. What is not in dispute is the operational concept they embody. Having served in military intelligence, I have a deep appreciation for what it means when a weapon system is purpose-built to exploit specific vulnerabilities in an adversary's defensive architecture, rather than simply trying to match its strengths. The Mosquito fleet was not designed to defeat American destroyers in a conventional exchange of fire. It was designed to create an operational environment in which American destroyers become irrelevant. Iran publicly claims some of its fastest attack craft can reach sustained speeds exceeding 100 knots on open water, approximately 185 kilometers per hour, in an environment where commercial supertankers move at perhaps 15 knots. The tactical geometry this creates is devastating in ways that conventional naval doctrine has no adequate answer for. These craft can emerge from a concealed coastal position, accelerate to full attack speed, close to engagement range with a target vessel, deliver their weapons, and disappear back into the rocky coastal terrain before any shipboard defensive system can complete a full threat assessment cycle. The available engagement window for a defender, the time between initial detection and point of impact, is measured in seconds, not minutes, seconds. And this is not a gap in American capability that Washington is working to close. This is the precise operational outcome that IRGC planners designed, modeled, refined, and built toward over decades of institutional development. But if you think the fast attack boat fleet is the most alarming component of what Iran has constructed in those waters, stay with me, because what I'm about to describe next is where the situation moves from serious to genuinely unprecedented at a strategic level that the entire mainstream coverage of this crisis has consistently and significantly failed to capture. The Mosquito fleet is only the most visible layer of a multidimensional kill zone architecture, because layered directly above the surface threat from fast attack craft is a drone warfare program that has been expanding in operational sophistication, production volume, and tactical integration for years at a pace that the Western defense community has repeatedly underestimated. The IRGC has launched dozens of confirmed drone strikes against commercial shipping since this crisis began, in late February 2026. Some launched from land-based positions along the Iranian coastline, some from IRGC surface vessels operating within the strait, some from pre-positioned assets already inside the waterway itself, before the first American or Israeli aircraft crossed Iranian airspace. The Sufan Center, one of the most credible independent security and intelligence analysis institutions in the world, it's formally assessed that the Strait of Hormuz closure was accomplished primarily through the combined employment of IRGC fast attack craft and aerial drone systems conducting direct fire against commercial tankers. No ballistic missiles required, no conventional naval surface warfare required. Just the coordinated employment of two asymmetric systems that Iran has spent years integrating into a single coherent operational concept. And that combined approach, the assessment concluded, represented Iran's single most operationally effective strategic instrument in this conflict. The trap did not spring shut militarily. It snapped shut financially. Within days of the crisis beginning, major global maritime shipping corporations were not being physically prevented from entering the strait by a naval blockade. They were suspending operations because the war risk insurance premium for any vessel attempting transit had become so astronomically elevated that passage was economically impossible to justify. That distinction matters enormously, and it has been almost completely missed by mainstream coverage. Iran did not need to sink 100 tankers to close the strait. It needed to create sufficient demonstrated threat that the maritime insurance market made the commercial calculation for every ship owner completely unambiguous. And it achieved that outcome with a speed and efficiency that reflects careful advanced planning, not improvised crisis response. The financial component of the trap was engineered just as deliberately as the military component. Both snapped shut simultaneously. You think you understand the full scope of what Iran built in those waters? You don't. Not yet. Because there is one weapon system at the center of this crisis that the overwhelming majority of people watching this have never heard of. And it is the system that has permanently and fundamentally altered the threat calculation inside the Strait of Hormuz in ways that no surface-level news analysis has even begun to adequately address. It is called the Azdar. It is an Iranian-developed unmanned underwater vehicle, an autonomous submarine drone built and refined in relative operational secrecy over years. And it is now emerging in defense and intelligence circles as potentially the single most strategically significant weapons platform in Iran's entire Hormuz arsenal. Let me explain precisely why, because the technical details here are not incidental. They are the entire point. The Azdar is powered by lithium battery electric propulsion, no combustion engine, no mechanical drive system generating vibration. In operational underwater conditions, it produces virtually zero acoustic signature. In an underwater warfare environment, where acoustic detection through sonar systems is the primary method of identifying submerged threats, a near completely silent electrically driven underwater drone is functionally invisible to the standard passive sonar defensive systems deployed on conventional naval surface combatants. Its operational endurance allows continuous submerged operation for up to 4 full days without surfacing, resupply, or active communication. Its operational range has been assessed at exceeding 600 kilometers, meaning a single deployed Azdar unit can navigate the entire length of the Persian Gulf, loitering in operational areas without ever surfacing, without maintaining a live command link, and without requiring any continuous human supervision. When you combine an acoustically invisible, fully autonomous, multi-day endurance underwater weapons system with a surface threat from hundreds of fast attack craft and a simultaneous aerial drone campaign, you create a genuinely three-dimensional kill zone, a layered operational environment attacking simultaneously from below the surface, at the surface, and from the air that no conventional naval defensive posture in the world today was ever designed, equipped, or doctrinally prepared to address across all three vectors at once. This is the reality of what U.S. Fifth Fleet is operating against in the Strait of Hormuz. Not a conventional navy. It can engage and defeat in an open water battle. A carefully engineered, multi-layered, three-dimensional threat environment specifically constructed to make conventional military superiority irrelevant in this precise geography. And the consequences of that reality are now being measured in oil prices, in empty shipping lanes, in diplomatic fractures among American allies, and in the cold strategic calculations of governments in Beijing, Moscow, and every other capital on earth that is watching this confrontation and drawing its own conclusions about the future of American power projection. Keep watching, because what happened when this crisis actually ignited in real time, the precise sequence of events beginning February 28th, 2026, is where 40 years of patient preparation became sudden, devastating operational reality on a global scale. And that is where the story gets truly consequential.